Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly incredibly profound yet completely ordinary. We're talking about those quiet, unspoken spaces in our everyday lives. Those moments that just completely resist easy categorization. We're going to use two deeply intertwined literary texts to embark on a poetic exploration of the margins. Basically, the spaces between what is said, what is known, and what is actually felt. Think about it. We spend so much of our time trying to perfectly translate our experiences into words or data or neatly packed little boxes. But what happens when we just can't? What actually happens in those gaps? Our source material hits us with this gorgeous, abstract concept right from the get-go. The novel is a seam where the light and cold get in. So a seam is literally where fabric pulls apart, right? We usually think of a fracture or a torn seam as a total failure, like a place where something just broke. But what the authors are proposing here is pretty wild. They're saying that the fracture line might actually be the most truthful place in any made thing. Yes, it's where the light gets in, but it's also where the cold gets in. It's where we feel the outside world the most acutely. As we go through this explainer, we'll see exactly how the absolute most profound truths of the human experience actually live right here, in these untranslatable gaps and fractured seams.
Okay, let's dive into this with part 1, the spaces between words.
Our texts introduce us to a translator named Lev. Now, Lev's entire life basically operates within a concept perfectly captured by this German word, Zwischenraum. And this isn't just a transitional threshold. It's not some hallway you just walk through to get to another room. It is the destination itself. It's the literal state of being between and residing right there. Lev literally translates between languages that have entirely incompatible grammars. He sits with these tiny little deaths of correspondence between words every single day. He lives permanently in this conceptual space, and he proves that the gap isn't empty. It's actually a place you can inhabit. And this concept extends way beyond just vocabulary. It actually applies to the very ground we stand on. See, Lev lives in a palimpsest city. That means it's a city that has successively been 5 different cities, with 5 completely different names, all built right on top of the exact same ground. His 9-year-old daughter, Mara, collects historical maps that brilliantly show this off. In the 16th century, cartographers drew these thick, super confident borders as if they were going to last forever. But by the 18th and 19th centuries, you see those borders moving back and forth like the tide. And today, the 21st century names just sit there completely oblivious, right on top of ghost cities. The exact same dirt holds completely different realities depending on the era. The borders aren't a force of nature. They're really just arguments we temporarily agreed upon.
Moving on to part 2, the practice of attention.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we deal with the ambiguous spaces in our own routines. In a town full of identical afternoons, an old-timer named Marcus at the local feed store delivers this seriously profound insight. He says, "We name our griefs, and then we walk past them every day and call them normal." In the same town, a woman named Vera and her husband Paul live a life that's organized entirely by his trucking schedule. 4 days gone, 3 days home. They love each other, absolutely, but they navigate their unsaid feelings in quiet repetitions like they're just walking around the living room furniture. They literally have streets named for harbors that don't exist and lakes named for lost coasts. Marcus's quote absolutely nails this human tendency. We slap a label on our pain, on our unspoken compromises or the gaps in our lives, and then we just make a habit of walking past them. We normalize the untranslatable.
Right smack in the middle of this town is Har Lake. Its depth has only been measured twice. Once by the county, who claimed it was exactly 41 feet deep, and once by a hydrologist who swore it was 39 feet. And this discrepancy? It's never been resolved. And the lake certainly isn't stepping up to offer an explanation, right? It just holds its depth. This perfectly symbolizes how the lake, and honestly life itself, just doesn't owe us exact answers. Whether it's 41 or 39 feet is almost irrelevant. The margin of error is in itself a kind of answer. In fact, Vera visits this lake specifically just to be near something that doesn't demand she be all right.
Which brings us to part 3, the other column. So let's talk about Delia. Delia is a 71-year-old birdwatcher. For 40 years, she's kept 16 notebooks of pure, silent attention to the world around her. She records the date, the species, the standard behavior. Now, that kind of standard data takes up very little space. But then she has this final column, the other column. And this is where she records the profound, totally uncategorizable moments of existence. The specific bird silence before weather rolls in. The way the light one morning held the exact shape of a person. She realizes that the other column isn't a supplementary column at all. The other column is where life actually lives. But, even the other column has its limits. One morning, Delia saw a bird she just couldn't identify. And it didn't look at her nervously checking for threats like birds usually do. It looked at her frontally, directly,
exactly the way her late husband used to look at her. They just locked eyes for 30 seconds. And Delia didn't write it down. Why? Because any description would immediately make the moment smaller than it actually was. The thing demanded only to be felt. Sometimes, the absolute most powerful thing you can do with an untranslatable moment is to simply let it remain unrecorded.
Let's move to and see how this builds into part 4, the untranslatable life.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the specific, almost heartbreaking math of translation. Our translator Lev and his colleague Petra are working on a medical consent form. The source language has 11 distinct words for different qualities of pain, but the target language they're translating into? It only has 4. Think about the sheer agony of that for a second. 7 highly specific kinds of pain will go entirely unnamed for the patient reading this form. When incredibly complex feelings are forced into smaller containers, the pain just becomes ambient. It stays inside because you literally have nowhere to set it down. You lose the precision of your own suffering.
Over on the wall of Lev's apartment, he keeps these index cards of words that just do not cleanly translate. 63 of these cards are marked with a little open circle. This number, 63, represents the completely unbridgeable gaps. Lev describes these specific translations not as a bridge between two shores, but actually as a boat. You cross the water, sure, but you leave the original shore behind forever. You arrive at the target language carrying a loss. It's such a powerful reminder that every single time we try to explain our deepest selves to someone else, we're crossing in that boat, leaving just a little bit of the original truth behind on the shore.
And because of this inherent gap, two people can look at the exact same truth and record it completely differently. Lev and Petra both translated a novel about a woman who's recording the last words of the dying. At the very end of the notebook, the dying man stops speaking, and the woman just draws a dash that runs right off the edge of the paper. Think about how they chose to translate this visual silence. Lev wrote, "The silence outlasted the page." But Petra wrote, "The page ran out before the silence did." Both are completely correct. Both bridge the gap differently. It visually emphasizes how a single ending can hold two fundamentally different yet entirely true interpretations.
One day, Paul, Vera's truck-driving husband, hears a word on the radio during one of his long night drives. It's the Welsh word herath. It means this profound homesickness for a home you can't return to, or maybe never even had. It is the grief of a door that simply doesn't exist. Well, later that summer, Paul pulls into his driveway. He watches his wife in the garden and his baby daughter playing in the dirt, just existing entirely without him, and he feels this sudden massive wave of what he calls herath in reverse. He isn't longing for an impossible past. He's struck with a fierce, aching longing for the beautiful, flawed, specific life he is looking at right now, a life he's about to step right into.
Bringing everything together, we reach part 5, choosing the specific. So the crucial point is beautifully captured in this realization Vera has while sitting with Paul in their kitchen. They definitely have their unsaid things. He travels, she stays. They don't fully know every single corner of each other's minds. But she realizes that it isn't about perfectly mapping everything out. It's about looking at the messy, untranslatable reality of your life and actively choosing it. Not just once on a wedding day or a move-in day, but every single day. The immense power of the human experience isn't in finding the perfect universal word for things. It's in choosing the highly specific, deeply imperfect life you actually have.
The margins of an ordinary life are vast. They are the 41 feet of dark water under the surface of the lake. They are the spaces between the words we say to our partners. They are the borders that move without us even knowing. So, I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up this explainer. Look really closely at your own daily routines, your own quiet habits, your own in-between spaces. What untranslatable moments belong in the other column of your specific life?